Hey, all you cool cats and kittens, it's your favorite history teacher back at you again with another historical video. And today we're going to continue on with chapter 3 of your textbook about early colonial America. And yeah, let's get into it. It was a kind of a longer chapter. But hey, gotta talk about it. Okay. It's society and culture in provincial America. So this is period 2 in the A-Push curriculum is from 1607 to 1754. And that's when you could kind of call it the American Revolution starts to happen with all the acts that that Parliament imposes upon the British, the American colonists. So yeah, let's get into it. All right. So the colonial population, again, heavily male, heavily white. Indentured servants, going back to last chapter, indentured servants, for example, there are a lot of them. Okay, that's how most of them came to America. If they didn't have a lot of money back in England, they would work off their debt in exchange for this passage. So, for example, 3/4 of the Chesapeake Bay, Virginia, Maryland colonists, 3/4 of the population were indentured immigrants. Throughout the 1600s. And factors that promoted indentured servitude, the native population, they don't combine well with the British colonists. They don't speak English. The colonists didn't speak their native language. Gonna have trouble. And, another part, also, that the natives kind of knew the surroundings, so they could just be like, all right, I'm done, I'm out of here. And they would run away, and the colonists don't really have a real good feel of the geography, so yeah, they can't find them. So also the headright system, the 50 acres of land, it's a lot of land, okay? And you know me from world history, a lot of land equals a lot of power. Well, a lot of land here is a lot of profitable potential to make that money. And also there was a decline of indentured servants because they would work off, 4 to 5 years later, they would become free, and they know all the bad things about you, and they would want their pound of flesh. That's a little more extreme, but, they become free and you would lose those servants. So you would want to keep, if you want to have servants doing all your work and you just want to make that money and profit, you're going to need another source of labor. And that is where the African slaves come in, because Bacon's Rebellion was a real eye-opener to every plantation owner around. Like, ooh, God, we don't want them revolting against us. We need someone who won't revolt. We need to keep them down, keep the man down. Okay, Bacon's Rebellion, indentured servitude. Pictures. Okay, women and families in the colonies, the Chesapeake Bay had a high mortality rate, and that's going to affect traditional families, husband and wife. There's going to be a high birth rate for married women because, every couple of years they be popping out babies, and, because there's a high mortality rate, Chesapeake Bay, it's kind of a humid area, there's water, no real sanitation, dysentery comes into effect, disease, conflict with natives, death, bad. So you need a lot, and if you're not an indentured servant, you need the kids to work the land, right? So it's not uncommon to have 10 or 12 size amount of children per family. In New England, however, family life was more stable than the South. There was a lower death rate. There were close-knit families that you would often see, live to see your grandparents. Can you imagine not seeing your grandparents? My God. And obviously, New England is all about the Puritans. Puritanism is running rampant. So, what are Puritans? Trying to purify Church of England, any church. And the similarities between Chesapeake and New England, women had fewer rights than men. Just know that, the similarities, and of course, many children. So, because again, if you don't have enough money to have slaves or to even have indentured servants, who's going to work the land with you? Your children. Here's a picture of a family. All right, so beginnings of slavery. Over 11 million Africans were forced to come to the Americas. And that might just be an understatement. There's probably a lot more. If you consider the ones that went down to South America and even the Caribbean. That's why they call it the Americas, because it includes Central, South, and the Caribbean. But, they came along the Middle Passage. If you remember the triangle trade, Europe, Africa, the Americas, that's the Middle Passage, the middle leg they're coming across. That's what the term Middle Passage comes from. Mid-1690s, the Royal African Company of England lost their monopoly on the slave trade, and that allowed more and more countries to be involved in the slave trade. So now you got the Portuguese, you got the Dutch, you got the French, all making trades down in their African colonies. Remember, this is around the time where they're just along the coast of Africa. I drew that like he knew what I meant. That's the silhouette of the African coast. So, they didn't go into the interior because, malaria. So there you go. Also, there were slave codes that regulated the behavior of slaves, meaning they can't marry, they can't read, they can't learn how to write. Don't give them the power of the pen. Okay, you have changing of sources of European immigration now. As they witness the English do it now, many French, German, Irish, and Scottish are going to begin to emigrate in large numbers. You have the Edict of Nantes. It's like, I looked it up on Google Translate. It's like Edict of Nantes. Yeah, look it up. Put it in French and have it come out in English and just listen to it. So this allowed Huguenots, who are French Protestants, to practice their religions in France. France is mainly a Catholic country. Germans will settle in Pennsylvania, and the Scottish and Irish will settle in North Carolina, especially on the frontier, out in the woods, in the wilderness, finding Bigfoot. And they made up the largest group of immigrants in the 18th century. Also, they came from this province of Ulster, which is Northern Ireland. And, Northern Irish are Protestant, regular Irish are Catholic. I think it's called the Troubles of, let's extra credit. Look at that, extra credit. Find me information on why Northern Irish were having troubles with the regular Irish. Actually, I don't think that's the correct time. Never mind, no extra credit. Don't look it up. No. And this is Andrew Jackson. He is a descendant of one of these immigrants that came over. Okay, similarities between the economies. Farming was common throughout, and trade with the natives was common throughout, obviously. In the Southern economy, tobacco was the main crop. In the Chesapeake, obviously more tobacco equals more land. They dry out the land. They got to find more land to grow the tobacco because it's addictive. But demand caused problems of overproduction. It's going to be too in the 1640s. Georgia, GA, and South Carolina, SC, they're going to focus on rice harvest. And growing this type of crop is tough work, and many whites, many indentured servants are going to refuse to do it. So, you know what's going to happen. Let's just bring in some African slaves that don't speak the language, that don't know what to do, figure it out themselves, make us our own profit. South Carolina also grew indigo, which is an important dye to dye clothes. And farms and plantations dominated the South, so few cities would develop. And that's going to remain true throughout until the Civil War. And the Civil War is going to expose that. Here you go. Here's some tobacco. Or is this no, this is a plantation. This is a rice paddy field. And this is trade with natives. All right, colonial economies. The North was much better. But large-scale farming did not really develop in New England. New England's not a state. Just know that. NE actually stands for Nebraska, but more on that later. So New England, colder climate, rocky terrain, not real good for all these types of crops that would be growing. The middle colonies, New York, Pennsylvania, they kind of produce the wheat. However, they're more the Northeast, even New England, they're all about the commercial economy, okay? Artisans, handymen, that type of, like the jobs, right? And new industries are going to grow by the 1650s, like we said in the last chapter: lumber, mining, fishing, and shipbuilding. And then you have the rise of colonial commerce. Since most colonists didn't have specie, it's specie, not species. I mean, you could try to say specie, but specie. And when that's gold, that's basically gold or silver. So commerce, the act of making a transaction, was all on barter. I'll give you 5 bales of wheat for 3 muskets. Okay, that's barter. All right, and this is also a part of the triangular trade. Again, interaction between Europe, Africa, and the Americas. In Europe, you make the industrialized goods from the Industrial Revolution, take it down to Africa, trade those with the African chiefs and villages in exchange for slaves coming across, and then the slaves are made in transaction with crops, cash crops, foodstuffs, what you saw, and that jewelry, I mean, gold, silver, if you could find it on the East Coast, and then take that back, tobacco, cotton, wheat, take that back to, I'm pointing like, Europe's over there, and have it be built over there. And again, like last time, British passed navigation acts that required colonists to only trade with Britain. Colonists, however, are going to get around to these. I almost wanted to say it in the last one, but those navigation acts are going to lead to people being like, well, if the Spanish offer me this much and you're making me pay you this much and only trade with you, I'm going to go this route, and that's going to lead to smuggling. So here's specie, gold, silver, shipbuilding, smuggling, and wheat. All right, patterns of society. In England, most people didn't own property, but that wasn't the case in the colonies. The plantation is going to grow. It's going to start in the Chesapeake region again with, obviously, tobacco. And plantations would be far from towns, and that's going to lead to different governments than in New England because, well, the plantation was kind of like their own town, right? Even large plantations may have provided schools and chapels because they're so far away from the town that, in New England, where the town was heavily involved, and, the city upon a hill in Massachusetts Bay, and you got the church in the center of the town. Not so much here, right? Not so much in the South. And plantation slavery is the biggest example of it. And most slaves did live on large plantations. Slaves will develop a unique culture, religion, and family structure within themselves, living together. But one big rebellion that you need to commit to memory is the Stono Rebellion. You have Bacon's Rebellion, Now you have the Stono Rebellion, and in 1739, 100 Africans revolted, stole weapons, and killed many of their white overlords. Killed many whites. As a result, they would be caught, they would be killed, and as a result, laws would become more strict regulating slaves, and that's not gonna do well. And that happened in South Carolina in 1739. So most slaves resisted, though, by running away because they weren't too aggressive. But yeah, Stono Rebellion, put that to memory. Here you have the Stono Rebellion, the largest slave insurrection in British North America, began nearby on September 9, 1739. About 20 Africans raided a store near Wallace Creek, a branch of the Stono River. Taking guns and other weapons, they killed 2 shopkeepers. The rebels marched south toward the promise of freedom in Spanish Florida, waving flags, beating drums, and shouting liberty. There's more on the other side, but yeah, Stono. Okay, Puritan community. The town, I just said this last slide, town played a large role in daily life. They divided up the lands, they provided fields. They also had town meetings, town halls, where they held yearly elections. However, the only people who could vote were males, landowners, and church members. You have this thing called the Halfway Covenant, which your book doesn't really describe. And that is a way to increase church membership because, not that many people were going to church. So a way that they would go is, they would offer this halfway covenant where they could gain church membership, but not have as many rights as, say, full members, full church leaders. So they sacrificed their religious purity for it. And then you have the Salem witch trials, which is pretty big. And it's about witches, the Sanderson sisters. And this hysteria throughout Massachusetts, women are going to be accused because they were single. A lot of people in Salem were, a lot of the males had died off with leaving widowed wives with the property. And if you had property back then, you had power within the town. So the people who were accused tended to have money, they were widowed, or they're in their old ages. And this is going to reflect religious and social tensions throughout the time. And most of the accused were independent who challenged the Puritan society. So you'll see this town. This is the people who were accused and their accusers. Remember that east-west difference from the last chapter? Well, here you have East and West Salem Village, and the Westerners have problems with the Easterners. And again, it's going to lead to people thinking that they're witches and they can conjure up spirits and all that, just because they have money. People. So patterns of society. Cities, Philadelphia and New York had over 25,000 people by the late 1700s. They are going to emerge as large trading centers. If you had me for big history, if you remember the Erie Canal being built led New York City to become the booming town, the booming city, the booming capital that it became over time. They also had established governments, and new ideas would emerge and spread. But it's going to lead to some inequality. The wealthy had increased power in churches and society, and men obviously have more power than women. So awakenings and enlightenment. So this is kind of a little throwback to last year, right? Tensions are going to arise between Protestants and Catholics in New France. That's in Canada, Rhode Island, Jews could worship freely. Remember Roger Williams being exiled from Massachusetts Bay for being too radical. You have Western expansion going to lead to a decrease in the power of the church because the church is at the center of the town. So the further away you are, the less power they're going to have over you there. So, there's some troubles going on. Remember the Great Awakening in the 1730s, 1740s. This Great Awakening is, trying to get people to be more religious. This movement had everyone can now develop a new relationship with God. George Whitefield and Jonathan Edwards are going to be one of the big time leaders of this movement in America. And you have the new lights versus the old lights. And these new lights are like Edwards and Whitefield saying that you can develop this new relationship with God, and they're going to give fiery sermons. And versus the old lights who are like the traditional people, boring sermons, And this is going to lead to new sects, 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 or branches to emerge. So you're going to have, from Protestantism, you're going to have, I can't think of any off the top. I can only think of Calvinism, but that's more Europe. But yeah, you'll have Calvin, Presbyterians, Adventists. I can't think of any, but a lot more come up just like those. And then you have the Enlightenment, which we all should know, committed to memory, especially if you had me last year. And that's, the movement away from religion. Reason, not faith, could find knowledge. And it's going to help undermine the power of traditional authority. And your boy, John Locke, comes to mind. Here's Whitefield and Edwards. This is Whitefield, this is Edwards. And he had a fiery speech called "The Sinners in the Hands of an Angry God," saying that the road to hell was lined with skulls of unbaptized children. So you say that to people who are worried about predestination and worried about if they're going to go to heaven. And if their son or daughter is not baptized, they could be lining the gates of hell. You're going to first go sign up for a church and then get your kid baptized ASAP. Plus, he just looks mean. He just looks mean, right? All right, more awakening. Education. Massachusetts law required every town to have a public school, 1647. Can you believe that, 1647? And that was the influence of close proximity and religion. Literacy rates were high among white males, obviously. In all instances, slaves were prohibited from reading. Prior to 1763, 4 out of 6 colleges were founded as schools for preachers, and that's what leads to Harvard being founded, is a school for preachers. The spread of science from the Enlightenment is going to emerge here. Your boy Ben Franklin and his lightning rod. The inoculation of smallpox, trying to, stop the spread of smallpox among the colonists, because smallpox to natives, they killed them. Then you have concepts of law and politics. You have this big trial, the John Peter Zenger trial, and where he criticized a British government official, and if you did that, you would be thrown in jail. It's that defamation of character. You might have heard that in the latest news cycle this past week, and it actually overturned in favor of John Peter Zenger, because the criticism of government officials was legal if it was true, and it was truly true for John Peter Zenger. So he got, I guess you could say, acquitted from it. And colonial governments enjoyed self-government. Colonial legislatures were very powerful. Remember, every colony had their own legislature, their own government. It was very different from one colony to the next. Then you have this idea of salutary neglect, where colonists would be left alone by the British and let them be their governing bodies, as long as they were making money for the mother country. And we all know how that turned out. Here's Ben Franklin. Here's the Harvard symbol. And hey, we're done. All right. That might have been a little bit longer, but I tried to zoom through. Get it, zoom. So yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed that little lecture. And yeah, if you did, leave a like, leave a comment. What am I saying? I don't know. I'm going to stop here, but hopefully you guys did enjoy. If you did, smash that like button. And as always, Stay safe. Wash your hands. Peace.